How do you turn a $100,000 radial engine into garbage in about 2 seconds? Well, there's actually a design flaw within the radial engine that we're going to show you guys today. If you know about radial engines, you know this problem very, very well. But I brought my brother Rod here, and he's going to actually show us. I made some props, and we're going to talk about engine hydraulicing. We've actually seen a hydraulic lock happen live on one of the PlaneSaver live streams. Uncle Ronnie and Trent were in Florida getting a DC4 ready, and they tried to start number 2.
Alrighty, I'm going downstairs. We're on 2. Okay, so number 2 engine hydraulic lock.
So what exactly happened there? You know, the prop just stopped moving. Well, it all has to do with oil, and specifically oil that gets to the bottom cylinders. But don't take it from me. Luckily, my brother Rod is here to tell us all about it.
So basically, real quickly, how oil gets into a cylinder over time is if you did a long taxi on a hot day, the engine is filling up with oil. It's not scavenging because it's not on speed. So there's various places in, for example, an exhaust valve, a loose guide, and a pushrod tube. Oil being at a level inside the engine while it's not flying could slowly seep into the cylinder. Once the oil's in the cylinder, it overcomes the volume of the combustion chamber, and that's where you're going to have a problem.
But not on that cylinder.
Not on this cylinder. So the top cylinders are not prone to it. The lower cylinders are. So scavenge pumps on the bottom, engine fills up with oil, or it sits a long time and there's oil just slowly draining in the engine. Each piston on the case side is full of oil. So slowly it could basically travel through these lines and fill up the combustion chamber.
Okay, look at this, folks. I made this little apparatus up here. It's basically a clear cylinder. It's just a water bottle with the top cut off and a spark plug screwed into the top, just like a cylinder, so we can see what is actually going on inside.
So basically, in this operation, you want to compress the air. This thing has to have this space in here being the combustion chamber, and that's where the pressure is going to build and then cause an explosion.
So here we go. So now we know that the cylinders at the bottom have the ability to fill up with oil. So our friends at McDonald's here are going to supply the oil.
Oh, it's warm. Yeah, so any oil that's entered the combustion chamber on the bottom cylinders due to gravity and access through the pushrod tubes or valves or valve guides now cause us a problem if we spin the engine over, because you cannot compress a liquid. I can't even get it to go that far. So
Yeah.
once that hits the liquid,
because remember, folks, this is airtight here.
yeah, the connecting rod is at an angle on the crank, hits the liquid, it stops, because nothing, what's the weakest part's got to give? Connecting rod bends, goes clunk.
To see actually how the radial engine works, I actually made a Lego radial engine. So here you go, Rod. Spin her over.
So basically, each piston is going in and out in order on its master. So that's essentially how that's working.
So you guys can see each piston is in a series. So each piston has to do its thing, and it's kind of like a clock. If you can picture, each second has to tick by for the prop to move. When a cylinder is hydraulic, it's basically putting a pin in a clock and stopping it. So actually I made this little thing here. So Rod, if you pull the cylinder head off here, and we take this right here, and we pretend that is some oil and fuel, we put it in the cylinder like that. So
We add
the oil, and now look, folks, that engine is now hydraulic. We cannot move this engine without damaging this cylinder, popping the top, or bending a crank. Of course, this is Lego, it's a little bit different.
but you can still notice, you see the angle of the connecting rod? So if you force this prop, that angle, because it cannot push against the liquid, will bend that rod. And it probably won't fail right away, but it will fail.
So what do? So here we take this and we got to remove the oil and stuff, and then when it goes back on, There we go. Rod can move the prop and the whole series happens. So now we know that if we get one cylinder stuck, the whole engine gets stuck. And in fact, if we try to push through, because we know from our original one here that we can't compress this liquid, we got to get the oil out. So Rod, what's the easiest way to get the oil out?
Pull the plug out.
Pull the spark plug. Simple.
So you take the plug out, you take the bottom 5 or 7 front plugs out, and the oil's still in there. It could be in an intake pipe. It's all hidden inside there. And you start the engine and it squirts basically everywhere.
Got a bunch of oil in the number 9 cylinder, so we've let it out, and Ronnie's gonna try.
Now once the majority comes out, you get to start it and make a hell of a mess. It's awesome.
So there you go, folks. To solve the hydraulic engine, all you gotta do is pull the plug out. And it's a simple problem with a simple fix. But if you don't catch it in time, you can destroy the engine. Now, we've all seen those World War II movies where guys are walking the prop, you know, B-17, and, you know, part of the starting procedure. Okay, I won't get too far into this, folks, but World War II was a little bit different. They had different starters and different starting procedures. I won't get too far into it, but they had a thing called an inertial starter, which took kinetic energy in various forms and actually used that to drive the starter to start the engine. Modern aircraft, or I shouldn't say modern radial engine aircraft, have starters that have clutches in them that protect the engine. So if the clutches are set up properly, the starter will not provide enough force to overcome the hydraulic and bend the rod. If the starter's not set up properly, you could destroy the engine with a wrong starter, believe it or not. So the bottom line, if you don't know what state the engine is, should you move the prop?
Pulling on the prop blade with the hydraulic cylinder is enough to bend the connector.
So that's where it goes. So with radial engines, do not pull the prop if it is hydraulic. You can check, you can check a little bit, but if you, as a normal human being, because the leverage of the prop, just like how we saw at the Lego, if you pull too hard, you can break something, you'll bend the rod. Sometimes you don't know it was hydraulic.
No.
And the engine goes on. Now, is there a risk of the engine failing?
Yeah, so if you were to pull it too far and bend the rod, it's going to fail eventually. That rod's going to break and it's going to take out all of the row, the whole row. You're going to have a catastrophic failure. Now, most engines I hear at overhaul have evidence of slightly bent rods. Now, that could be because there wasn't enough liquid in there to actually stop the engine, but when you do a start procedure, basically, if you have a 14-cylinder radial, you give it 9 blades on the starter. The starter has a clutch. If it does hit one, it's going to stop. So basically, you'll see guys just cranking, and you wonder what they're doing. They're waiting to make sure that there's been a couple complete cycles that has checked that there's no oil in the cylinder before they hit the ignition.
So we've seen that to solve, you can pull the plug, but there's also can go through the valves.
Yeah, basically, as it's turning, if there's small amounts of liquid, it's going to go out the exhaust valve.
But sometimes it's just too much liquid.
Yeah, so when you see a really smoky engine at startup, all engines will smoke at startup. That's residual oil sitting in the exhaust.
So have you seen an engine destroyed by being hydraulic?
Yes, I've seen engines that failed because of a hydraulic at some time in their life, yeah. But if you follow procedures, use direct cranking starters, which is all you have nowadays, and follow the maintenance manual and do your engine runs or a burping procedure if it's been more than 7 days, 99% of the time you're okay.
The world's a crazy place, so hopefully that little radial engine video kept your mind off how crazy the world is. But look what we have here. If you like that video, maybe... What do you think?
Allison.
What do you think, Chucky?
The Allison prop jet engine, eh?
Look at that. Is that
Take
you,
a look
Chucky?
at that. There's Chuck when he was a kid. See the hair? That's what I used to look like. Yeah, yeah.
So guys, you want Chucky to talk about Allison engines? Let me know. See you guys in the next one.
Yeah,
Bye.
Allison, eh?